Hello, everyone, and welcome to another historian's interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I am your host, Gabriel Garcia, always known as the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. Today, I have another guest from my Historians Lounge Season 1 lineup. Now, my guest is an incredible person. If you remember our episode last year, we talked about the United States Marine Corps, which was very important to both of us because we are both children of Marines. And if you even remember that year as well, she was also part of my December's reflection of the Wandering Scribe and Wandering Quills Historians Lounge series. But if you've been with me from the beginning, you will remember her for making her debut appearance in season 2 of the Wandering Scribe podcast, where it was still just audio. She is an incredible person. She is a lovely person, a talented historian, overall, a great person, and one I am happy to have in my circle of historians and circle of friends I have met on LinkedIn. So let's give a huge round of applause to a returning guest and another one of my dear friends, Lynne Marie. Lynne, thank you so much for coming back on the channel.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the kind comments.
You're welcome, Lynne. You're welcome. So, yeah, it has been a while since we had you back on the show. Well, had it not been for December of last year, it would have been almost a whole year since we last had you on the show. But since December, it's been March, April, May. Yeah, it's been 5 months since you've been back on the show, and curious to know what have you been up to as of late. Any new projects written? Any dissertations worked on? What's been new since the last time we spoke?
Well, since when we last spoke, I have written a paper on the Battle of Macon, which is the Army's battle during the Battle of Tarawa. So Operation Galvanic is the broad name for it. The actual operation itself is called Operation Corbush. So I did that, and I am getting ready to. Well, I also did some research on the Battle of Guadalcanal, and I'm getting ready to do more looking at the Marine air wings of Guadalcanal more so, I think, and then maybe working, hopefully going to archives soon and digging into Oliver P. Smith, a Marine general.
Nice. So you've been busy. You've been working diligently on this project, which that is good. That is incredible, Lynne. So now let's dive into the history questions. I do want to let you know some of these questions are going to be a little bit different from your first historian's interview 2 years ago. So let's sort of start back at the beginning as almost like a reminder for first timers here on the channel. So for you, Lynne, what was your aha moment and your desire to become an historian? Because if I remember correctly from our first time we spoke 2 years ago, history has been very important to you. History grew up with you. It was all around you. So how did that desire to become a historian come about?
It, like I said before, I grew up sharing history with my dad, who was a corpsman with the Marines 3-3 in Vietnam. And so him and I would, Ben's front sentence there, he and I would share history books and talk about the books together. And we also would watch documentaries together, especially when I was real little. And so he kind of helped encourage that, buying me books and stuff like that. But I think when I got to college and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, and I kept taking history classes, it just fell into my lap, that part. And then several years later, my dad got really, really sick. And it was just like my aha moment, like I want to do this military history. So God kind of opened those doors up, so to speak. He was like, go ahead, get your master's in military history. We'll get you there. And I did, and I took that step, and I just loved it. I mean, it was just fun. All of grad school was fun. It wasn't like in undergrad, you have all these classes you take that you just drudgery. It was fun. I didn't mind spending 10, 12 hours a day doing it. It didn't feel like work. It just felt like fun. And I love just like finding stuff. Like anytime I find a primary source that's related to something I'm looking for, it just excites me to see what those people wrote or whatever. And then I love to tell people about history. It's always been something I do. It's just who I am. I love talking about how this country was founded. I love talking about how the military has shaped it and shaped it every which way we know. And we don't realize how much they did. But even our medical stuff that we get today has probably gone through a military some way or somehow, which is just really cool how that all. So I think all that together, my dad was one of the guys who was exposed to Agent Orange. He was exposed to bad water at Lejeune.
Mm-hmm.
And he was diagnosed with a rare form of thyroid cancer that they had no idea how to treat. And during that time period, it was a way I could give access to my dad by going the military history, I think, for everything he's done for me and everything. And it was also, like I said, just fun for me. I really love it. I enjoy it. It's a passion, and it's easy for me to get lost in it.
Nice. Just like another one of our friends, Michael, who's also very passionate about history and who also, just like you, was also inspired by history from his dad, who also was in the military. So
Right.
for you, Lynn, when you were in graduate school and you graduated with your degree in military history, and you knew that to your core that being a historian is something that you wanted to do, what was the promise you were making to not only yourself but also to the field of history in terms of how you would present it to the next generation?
I want to excite that next generation. That's a promise. I want them to want to know. I want them to understand where they come from. I want them to know who they are. And by sharing these stories, these stories of these human beings, these men and women who served on the front lines, we get to show them that it's not just dates and facts. That we get to show them that we get to dig into stuff and find different things and show different perspectives of something that happened a long time ago that we may not know, but we've learned through history. And I think by showing people who we are, where we come from, I think today you look at college campuses and you see these kids are lost. They don't understand the history. They don't understand who they were. I mean, who their parents were, their grandparents were, what we've gone through as a nation, what we've done. Yes, we made mistakes as a nation, but we've also done a lot of good. And then a lot of good parts getting lost. And I think we need historians that are passionate about reaching these people and sharing what history really means. We're losing history all over this country on the name of people looking at things from today's perspective. And my promise to history is to try to honestly look at history from their perspective, to understand where they're coming from and to see where they're at, and not just look at it from today's perspective and think, oh man, this person's horrible or whatever they did, but to look at the whole picture, not just one aspect of a person.
Absolutely, 100%. History now more than ever, it needs to be taught. And again, just like our good friend Michael, who was actually on the show yesterday, he said the exact same thing. History needs to be taught. It needs to be preserved. It needs to be recorded and documented because we will never know. Yes, there are bad things in history that have happened. No one can deny that. But we need to keep it, to study it, and to make sure that those events in history do not repeat itself. And yeah, exactly what you said, Lynn. Like even here in the United States, our nation has had its fair share of bad history, but that has impacted every nation in the world.
Right.
There's good and bad. We need to understand both. And it is important to know that, especially now more than ever when the field of history is under attack. So now, looking back, when you started as an historian, what was the initial reaction from friends and family who saw that you were very passionate about being a historian, as well as when you were beginning? I don't know if at this time you were working on any small projects, small papers, or dissertations or reviews, but from the feedback from friends and family and fellow history buffs who saw your work, what was the reaction like? And do you feel that their reaction validated your promise to the field of history and to yourself?
Yes, I've been very supportive. Eddie, my husband, he's like been 100% behind me. He's like, he understands me stepping down from teaching and just focusing on this because it's hard to do both. And so he's been a big help, and he sees my gift and encourages me when I get frustrated sometimes. Because those moments, I've had people tell me, classmates or peers even now, that they see my work and they know that I'm knowledgeable and I write it in a creative way, a way that presents it in an interesting fashion. And that is really a high compliment because that's what we want, people to want to read it and all. I've had several businessmen, professionals that I know that aren't necessarily in the history field, but they've seen my work and they really had high praise for what I did, and which was really cool to see because these are men that I respect. They're one of them's like education, one is finance, stuff like that, and it was really cool. One of the kids I nannied read my stuff. I didn't know he did it, and he told me. He goes, yeah, Lynn, that was really good. I really enjoyed it. Good work. So it was neat to hear him saying that, this 20-something saying, hey, this is really good. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. So it's really good to see that and to know that I'm making a difference in a positive way like that.
That's amazing. That's really, really cool. And that kind of leads into the next new question, which I think is important to discuss, which is, as I'm sure you will agree, Lynn, being a historian is like being an author, working long hours, crafting a story that you're really passionate about, going through hours and hours of edits and revisions, and then you're putting it out there on the digital stage in the historical field, trying to hit that audience, either if it's like the hardcore World War II history buffs or a general audience of people who may not be interested in history, but they will probably find the topic very interesting. And then there's that hit or miss, which can affect a person's ability to continue pursuing their passion. And that voice of imposter syndrome creeping in the back of one's mind. I've had that experience saying, you shouldn't be in this field. You're crazy. You're overplaying your hand. So I'm wondering, Lynn, for you and your journey as a historian, has come across imposter syndrome? And if not, what has continued to discipline you to pursue learning history as well as teaching history and writing history, because this is something that you are passionate about and where you belong?
I think the fact that I love it so much that it drives me. It's not like I was just telling you, there's this one article that I've written. It took me longer than normal to write, and I kept going at it, I kept chipping at it, and I had those doubts that you talk about, because being a historian sometimes can be lonely. We don't always reach out to each other and say, hey, can you give me a encouraging hand here? We just kind of have to power our way through, and because we're all the same boat pretty much. I think just knowing that I need to do this to my best of my ability for God, but also for myself. And if I don't push through those times, I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I know it with all of my being. There's nothing else that I've done other than when I nannied, those two kids, that has been this rewarding and this enjoyable, and it's just makes me happy. And people that, when they were seeing me in grad school, I've had friends say they saw me blossom, more confident and all that. And I know it's because of God's grace, of course, but because I'm in what I'm supposed to be doing. if I wasn't doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I don't think I'd feel this driven. Well, I know I wouldn't feel this driven. I'm driven to keep on researching. I'm driven to do this. Like you said, I don't mind spending 10 hours, 12 hours a day.
Right.
We all know there's sometimes sacrifices that we are making that we sometimes get to us. Like, why, I want to do this or do that instead of this. But then we're like, wait a minute, this is worth it. It's worth those times. And when you have the support network that we have, I know for a fact that I can always call you.
Yes.
Say, I need pep talk here. I know I have that, and I think that helps, knowing that you have people behind you also to support you during those times where the imposter syndrome, and knowing that there's people out there telling you, hey, you're good at what you're doing, also always helps.
100% agree. 100% agree. And it is true, especially in the historical field, where if you are not almost like in like the civic, like the big higher end, the tiers job, like a state historian, working at a Smithsonian, researcher, and so forth, you kind of find yourself in a position where it's like, okay, well, how do I craft myself and build myself up? Which I think is a very interesting discussion to have, which I had with Michael yesterday. And I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this, Lynne. So for you, Lynne, when you just got out of graduate school and you knew history was something that you wanted to do, as you said, you were adamant about being a historian because you want to not only preserve these stories, but to tell these stories. How did you sort of craft your brand as being an historian? Because I definitely feel now more than ever, unless you are in those top tier positions in the historical field, you kind of find yourself as a self-made historian in a sense of you have to get different skills to build up your brand, where it's like being a researcher, a consultant, a freelancer. So for you, Lynne, how did you go about building your brand in the digital age?
I feel like I'm still kind of doing it, so to speak. When I got out of grad school, I finished my class literally, and a week later, I was teaching all year long. And so I didn't get that time right after, like a lot of people did, to build stuff up right away. So I'm kind of rebuilt. I'm still trying to get my name out there more and all that. And so I'm trying to use, and I think I have done that. I've kind of noticed. I think I've noticed that people are considering me a Marine Corps historian, and that So I think I have a brand, but I feel like I need to build it more, like get myself out there more. And I think part of that, again, teaching took a lot of out of my historian way. So like I said, I spent a whole year teaching, and then I came back and I started working there in that summer and trying to build things up again. And then I end up at school again, teaching for like a month or so. And then after that is when I really was able to start focusing on just that. And that's when I got my article published, was like last summer.
Right.
And I'm like, after all this, so even though I graduated a couple of years ago, I'm still in the process of building up things and trying to get myself into journals and all that now. So I think my brand would be Marine Corps historian, but I also, or at least amphibious historian, but I'm still working on building it up more, type of thing. And having you and Michael and others helping me, guide me in that area, who are a little further ahead of me, is something that I've relied on some too. I'll go to you guys and say, hey, how do I do this, or how do I do, type of thing, because they don't necessarily know, because I'm learning as I go. So I've only had a year now where I've completely focused on military history, which is lovely, but
Right, absolutely. And it is important to really understand, like, what are your long-term goals in being in any field of study, which I talked with Michael and a lot of other my guests on my show, where it's like, if you understand your long-term goals in your position, where it's like, as I mentioned before, being an author, being a historian, you really have to consider which of these two categories do you belong to. Do you want to be an author or an historian? Or do you want to be known as an author and historian? Because those are two different goals with two different mindsets. And I definitely feel a lot of people, at least ones I've come across and interviewed on the show, initially said that they want to be known as, an author and historian, but they realize that that kind of takes away the passion out of, what they're doing, their projects, because they want to be known. They want to be a part of the clicks and the trends, whereas those who just write for themselves and are historians, they still produce historical content, but they're not trying to be known as an historian, is a very interesting perspective. And we can go into detail more on that a little bit later. But now, Lynne, going back to, of course, your articles that you've written before, up to this newest one, the 5,000 words. From the last time we spoke, you have written a few book reviews and some articles, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, I've done those. My one paper was on Major Pete Ellis in amphibious theory. He was the guy who wrote the amphibious theory that they used for World War II. We talked about that before. But he was like, it was a big paper. I wrote it in grad school, and then I took it and I fixed it up a little bit more, and then I submitted it and all. So yeah, and in my book reviews, and then I posted on LinkedIn too. So between those areas, yeah, I've had several things published. Some of them are online, some of all online, because you can get to them through my website from LinkedIn. But so it's just, like you said, trying to. I think for me right now, yes, down the line, if someone knows who I am, as a historian, is great and everything. But I don't necessarily need to be that Smithsonian historian, because I'm not going to get a PhD. I don't want to go all that time, and that's what you need to do for those type of historians. But to be who I am as a historian, to write and have an income, from it. It doesn't have to be a huge income, but something that supports us, so to speak. You can say I'm getting paid for my work, type of thing. There's
Definitely.
a scholarly, something we've talked about in the summer. That scholarly historian, and then mass published historian, type of thing, where you have to. So there's a balance between the two. You have to be able to do both, and
definitely. And that kind of leads in going back to your articles, which is an interesting discussion, which I want to have with you, which is, as you know as well as I know, when you write like a paper in grad school, you're writing for an audience in mind that already knows what you're talking about. But when you're writing for like a scholarly journal or even a magazine, you also have to be mindful that the audience is vastly different, which also affects how you write history and how you present history. So this is a little bit of a two-parter. So for you, Lynne, how would you say your writing style has changed from grad school to now? And what historians and professors would you say really helped you come into your voice as an historian and as a writer? Because again, that's very different styles of writing in terms of like an academic paper and then an article for a scholarly journal and a magazine. Two different writing styles, two different types of voices, but you're not sacrificing, historical fact and accuracy and authenticity. You're just presenting it in a different way.
My LinkedIn articles are usually shorter, a lot shorter. Might have a little more, might be featured on one aspect of like something. For example, I did one on Julian Smith, General Julian Smith, Marine Corps, General Holland Smith, Marine Corps, and Ralph Smith, Army General. And because they were all in Operation Galactic, and I was just comparing, contrasting their leadership styles or whatever. Holland Smith and Ralph Smith very much hit heads, very much, didn't agree on stuff or whatever. And he actually said that he would end up taking Ralph Smith out of command eventually down the line, because he did not feel like he was a general that he would take. Well, and that'll make it, for example, there was definitely leadership issues going on, because he was considered a wise tactician, because he went to the GAR, the French Military School of Honor, which was really
Right.
But Ralph Smith didn't have any amphibious operational experience. So when he developed his plan for the Battle of Macon, he actually, instead of concentration, which they did, they had like at Tarawa, they had 3 landing sites, 1, 2, 3, and they all happened at the same time. So you have mass concentration. They're dispersed, but it's still mass concentration. Where he did 2 separate landings. One landing had 2 of them on one side of the island, the atoll, and the other one he had to do 2 hours later. The one that happened 2 hours later had much more resistance because they saw these ones coming and they ran and they had to set up somewhere else. And so the Yellow Beach had a lot more resistance. Now, not anywhere compared to the Battle of Tarawa. Tarawa was a total different animal, so to speak. But it still happened, and he actually, Holland Smith felt like Ralph Smith's men took too long to seize Macon. It took them 6 hours, just like it took Tarawa. Which, if you know the battle of history at all, you'd be like, what? How did this happen? This makes no sense. That took them this little, this group this much time, and this much time. And the Marines, they had a one of the most hardest fought battles in the Pacific War, period. Where Macon was kind of like a cakewalk, comparatively speaking, to Tarawa. Not that I want to play the importance of that battle, because these guys had a crash course in how to have worked with this warfare. The Army didn't do anything with this warfare. They had like a joint thing for a little bit with Marine Corps, but it didn't really go anywhere. And so the 27th Division, which was a National Guard unit, that was formalized into the Army, federalized into the Army, was the guys who did Macon. So they weren't even professional 365 day soldiers at Macon. They had some because they had to bring them in, and they were short staffed. Right from the beginning, they pretty much lost a lot of their men to what is it called? I can't remember the name of it now. Some type of discharge for family members. That's what it is. And so they lost that. So they never were at full staff at all, 27th Division, even before the battle. And so, here they are. And then they were also dispersed out when they first went to California to defend the coast. They weren't even together as a unit there. Then they went to Hawaii, and then again they were dispersed until came in together as a 165th Regimental Combat Team. At that point, that's when they started working together as a unit. So they had low morale. They had a general who hadn't done any amphibious operations in the South. All these things, and then they were very green. They actually, believe it or not, after 2 days of battle, they actually got rid of their packs, including their knives. And so they had no way to dig in for the last night they were there. And so they had what they called sake night, which the Japanese got all drunk on sake, I guess. And they tried to incur the perimeter line of the Americans. And they were able to stop them, but they had no way to dig into the hole, because they didn't have anything to dig into the atoll with. So they had very little foxholes. So stuff like that, they weren't pulled into it. Like, if they would have happened like the first night they were there, who knows what would have happened? It would have been a disaster probably. So they had time to learn, but again, they had a lot. They just weren't. It wasn't the same level of preparation as the Marines had. They already been through combat. They had spent years training. So if it would have flip-flopped, it would have been a lot. Probably a lot more people would have died. As simple as that, just because they weren't ready to do that. They actually had orders, I can't remember where I saw it, to not fire that night. They were told not to fire their guns at all. They were supposed to use their bayonets or whatever, because they had just, they heard noises, they shot. And of course, that happened at Tarawa too for the guys that are newer, first, or Guadalcanal. If they were at Guadalcanal, the first time, maybe they might overreact to stuff because a hypervigilance happens. But they took, they just had a lot harder um, situation as far as being prepared for war goes compared to the Marines, in my opinion, based on what I've read, my research.
Wow.
Yeah,
And that, I would imagine, when crafting a story like that, you're really also trying to figure out, okay, who's the audience that this is really going to really
right.
target. And I
So,
definitely think, at least from my opinion, Lynn, that this, from what you've told me, that this would definitely really hit home with those who are really into like the World War II, and more hardcore for the Marines, either children of Marines or people who just love Marines history. And I feel that, like authors, historians also have to be mindful of like who their audience is. Michael said it perfectly last time on the show, where he said for him, he has two audiences. He has the academic who knows the facts and the history behind it, and then he
right,
has the history buff audience that are interested in history, and they're not going to be boggled down by, of course, names, dates, and places, because I'm sure you definitely agree, Lynn, that's probably been like a death sentence for anyone that's actually wanted to pursue history,
right.
because we are just taught that relentlessly about its memorization, and that just kills history. But it's not. It's a
It's stories.
lot.
It's, you know,
It's
it's,
important to
yeah,
make it engaging.
right. And that's it. I mean, this is an Army audience. So I actually didn't mention a lot about Ralph Smith, although, I mean, the controversy with them, I really didn't mention much about it. I just did say that we reluctantly, Holland reluctantly approved plan because it was complicated. And I mentioned the Manson's operations and how um, it talked about concentration of forces, and he didn't do that. But my papers, the first word is overcomers. I call them overcomers because they overcome all these things to get there, and then they won the war, won their battle, and then they went on and kept going on, and building on their skills. I call them overcomers because even though if you look at it from a Marine Corps perspective, it wasn't a great battle. And I mean, if you're thinking about from the Marine, the training and all that aspect, I can't look at it like that. I want it to be a positive thing and saying these guys are overcomers. They paved the way for other guys, the other Army guys who follow them in how to fight this war. And they helped win the war because of this battle. This battle was like a stepping stone, for them.
Right.
And that's how I approached it because it was an audience of Army, because it's Army's on point journal. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to focus like that. I don't want to bring in the controversy aspect for that. That's something I can do on LinkedIn. Or where people that are following me are following history or historians, where I
Right.
can talk about the contrast between those guys. And that's why I didn't necessarily, like I said, I didn't really talk about that and talk about Julian Smith at all when it comes to, other than mentioning him as the leader of the Marine Corps. And the Marine Corps had more experience, and they thought, stuff like that you might want to know about as a side step, but not necessary. Like I didn't even really talk about the LVTs like I normally would. Normally I would mention when I first started writing it, I actually didn't mention it. But then I'm like, second time around, I'm like, nope, I just want to focus on the things that they overcame. The fact that the Army had downsized to the point that they were a skeleton force. That's something they had to overcome. They had to overcome the budget. They had to overcome isolationism. They had to overcome weaponry not being as advanced as it could be because they didn't spend a lot of money on that type of thing because they couldn't get.
Right.
All those are things that made them who they are. I had to talk about the fact that they were National Guard Army that was federalized into the Army, and how they were broken up and divided, and all those things, and how they had low morale at one point. Those are all things that made them the overcomers. And so that's why I chose not to focus so much on the battle per se, but on the journey to the battle, and then mentioning the battle might be like a paragraph or two. So
Nice.
type of thing.
Awesome. And this kind of then leads into another new question, Lynn. So brace yourself. This is a heavy hitter. So I'm going to lay down some context for this question. So I'm sure, Lynn, you would definitely agree that in any field where, especially in history, new things are being discovered, every day. New studies are being shown, new pieces of history are being unveiled, and once a discovery is made, everybody wants to be a part of it. That's where we talked about the clicks and the trends, that
Mhm.
everyone wants to be a part of that, to write something and to create something. And I think a lot of first-time historians definitely get blinded by this, that, oh, this is my moment, this is my opportunity to get my foot in the door. And I think that's kind of, at least in my opinion, a bad thing, because as I talked on the show, there is no guarantee that your debut anything is going to be the start of your legacy. Now, I've had people who have been the exception to that in terms of being authors. I've had one guest, Annie Peliquin, whose debut novel allowed him to reach award-winning status and allow him to live off his royalties to make 3 more series of books. But
Wow.
on the off chance, I know, but on the off chance, you have those that rise, fall, rise again, and then completely fall. And that comes to the discussion of, what were your long-term goals? What were your plans going into this? And that, of course, comes back with a case of imposter syndrome and wondering, oh, you overplayed your hand, you don't belong here, this isn't your best work at all. And that can really deflate somebody and really kill their passion. So, Lynn, in your opinion, how important is it for new time historians to understand that there is no guarantee that their debut anything, paper, article, book, presentation, whatever, is going to be the start of their legacy? But it should not deter them from studying history, because they can continue to grow.
Right.
Because, as one of my guests said, grit trumps talent.
Yes. I totally agree with that. With that grit. I think as a new historian, you should automatically expect that you're going to have some no's at times. There might be something that they're not interested in, or something weird happens, or whatever. It doesn't matter. But you have to keep on going. You have the drive. And there's times like you and I have talked about, where things don't go easy sometimes when you're writing. It just doesn't go easy, no matter what. It might be a brain block. It might be your brain just going bonk, 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 like mine did. I want to write this. Oh, no, I want to write this. Sometimes you have those days where your brain just doesn't follow a straight line. Even with
Right.
even with a detailed outline, you can have these troubles. Because I had a detailed outline, but I still, like, I'm writing it, on a piece of paper, and then like, oh, I want to write this, and that arrow's going this way or whatever, and eventually it just gets lost because your brain's going everywhere. So it's okay to have days like that. The key is that you get up the next morning, you try again, and you do your best again. And I have a friend who's in grad school, and I've encouraged him that way. I'm like, he's had trouble writing. I'm like, you know what? Even if you can't think of anything to write, just write. Just write. So you're doing that act. And I also had somebody tell me when I first started grad school, he was my board advisor, I think they called him, or whatever it was. And he said to me, try to make sure you write every day. When, like, at least when you're in grad school, so you're, writing, your writing gets better. And that's something that's going to happen. Your writing will get better as you go, just because you, as a beginning historian, you're going through grad school and you're learning how your areas of interest or what your passions are and how you want to write. I don't know about for you, but for me, I think most of my papers were related to amphibious operations or the Marines. Now I have exceptions to that because I had a class on the American Civil War and a class on the American Revolutionary War. You can't really pull
Right.
papers in those areas when you have certain things that you're doing. But I did the Battle of Tarawa. I did my thesis on amphibious operations. I did Major Pete Allison's A Theory. So I didn't mean to go that way. It just kind of happened. I find the topic like the Battle of the Chosen. I found that interesting. I wrote a book in one of my classes, and the Battle of the Chosen, and I didn't even know there was Marines involved in it at that point when I read the book. I mean, I knew there was Marines there, but I didn't know their side of the story or anything like that, and I didn't know the contrast. But because of that book, I followed a path. And that path was to learn more about that battle. And by learning about that battle, I learned about the Marines. I learned about General O.P. Smith and his leadership. So I'm just saying, it just kind of snowballed from this aspect, learning about this, Like I liked Major Pete Ellis. He's the reason probably that Marine Corps kind of just flowed through because he was a Marine and amphibious operations was my interest. And so of course, who's most known for amphibious operations? The Marine Corps. So it just follows through. So my point is, you find the area that you're really passionate about. Like I know you love alternate histories, and that's a passion of yours. And so that's something you focus in on, and you take these histories and you let your mind wander. What if I did that? What happens if I did this? If that happens, or whatever. And those are great discussions to have and learn from, and everything. But at the same time, I'm going this way, and that's okay. We all have our own path as historians. What is our area? Our friend Michael, he seems to be in everything.
Yes, he is.
We're both, we have more, our areas are big, but they're more narrow areas. Find who you are and follow your passion. Let that guide you, and don't give up. Even when you have imposter syndrome pop in your head, like, am I really a good historian? Am I really capable of this? Don't compare yourself to others.
Right.
And you're gonna mess yourself up. You're who you are. God made you for a purpose, and your purpose as a historian, and you have to find your journey, your path, whatever that is.
100%, absolutely. And also, I just want to say, my viewers and listeners, and for those who are fellow historians or history buffs that are watching this, we're not saying that you couldn't reach those goals that we've talked before, being like, in those tier ones. And even if you watch my other video with Michael, those goals are obtainable. But you definitely have to understand that to reach that goal, if that is your goal, it takes a lot of hard work and dedication. I remember saying this on the show a while ago, whereas if you want to be a historian or any field, and you see someone in that field and you see the benefits and the struggles, if you look at that person and say, I want to be like him, and acknowledge the benefits and the struggles tied with that position or tied with that goal, then you are going to be fine. If you don't, and you only focus on the benefits and say, I'm not going to struggle as she is or as he is or whatever, you may want to reevaluate your goals of what you want to do, because there's always going to be struggles. Everything is going to be an obstacle. Through the fires and the flames, you will persevere. A little Dragon Force reference. And as I said before, grit trumps talent. Doesn't matter how good of a writer you are. Doesn't matter if you're a good public speaker, a good organizer. Grit will always trump talent, because grit will become talent. That's how you grow as an author. That's how you grow as an historian. That's how you grow in your field, because it will take time. And if you want to become a researcher at the Smithsonian, you may go along the lines of being a state historian or a local historian in your area at a museum. And then from there, you can grow. It takes time. It takes time. It also helps to have a community to help back you up for everything. As Lynn and I have talked on the show, we have had a great group of people that have been with us. Shout out to Michael, Courtney, Chrissy, Professor Joyce, Neil Chatelaine, Anthony Tucker Jones, and Anthony Cowell, Chloe Agar, a lot of other people who I've had on the show who are in our inner circles. We all help one another because we all want to be with each other's success, and
we cheer for each
other.
We
then kind of leads into another question, Lynn. So you've talked about early on that your husband has been a huge supporter of your journey, and of course myself and the others in our community have really helped supported you, and others that you've known in graduate school and in your area, which is very important, because it does give, almost like for you, Lynn, and for all of us when we start in our field, a sense of, validation that, well, if these people believe in me, then perhaps I am on the right path. This is where I belong. So for you, Lynn, looking back at your life up to this point, how different would it be if you were not an historian? what would your life be like?
I would probably still be teaching.
Mm.
Because I wouldn't have. I don't know. I've always pretty much worked with kids, so it was just kind of where I was. I think having professors, like I forgot to tell you my professor that influenced me earlier. I just remember that. Was Dr. M. He's the one who said to me, "You need to be writing book reviews." So that was like a major validation, and he challenged me, in class, like when I was writing. Like he says, I want you to do a book review of this size. Literally, he just like size it needs to be. I'm like, what? Which is smaller than what you've been doing, And so he was a professor that pushed me. And I had it for 2 classes. So it was really nice having the same professor twice. And so he could see my growth. And he even said, part of being a good historian is being creative. The writing part, don't get so pedantic where you're just worrying about your grammar, but you need to have, and the craft part. And he said that comes with time. You learn how to say things differently or whatever, And I mean, he was like early in my grad school career, so he definitely helped shape me, I would say. And I mean, he's somebody now that I still have like in my LinkedIn group and contact number, so I can call him or text him if I need to, whatever. And so I have that, and so I think that is really helpful, knowing when you have professors that are behind you. That's even more special because you know that they're believing in you. And I also had another professor. He was my American Civil War professor. And he said to me, don't be so sensitive. He said, you were one of my best students because I'm like, I came back with a question, because I wanted to know what I do, how I did, whatever. He could tell I worked hard, that grit, and everything. And so he also encouraged me, so it's okay. You're going to hear criticism, and they're not criticizing you. It's criticizing your work and taking that
Right.
as a positive feedback and learning from that and growing from that, type of thing. So that's all important part of that historian. And like I said, the reason I think, I mean, I did get burned out teaching, so maybe I would be doing something different. But I think I was able to get burned out because I was doing, this was, in my back pocket, ready to come out type of thing. This is what I wanted to do. And I think when I started grad school, I didn't really realize how much I wanted to be a historian until then and got into it. So
Okay.
I loved it. I mean, I had people telling me in grad school that I should get my master's, that I should be a historian. So I had people telling me a long time ago. It just took me a while to realize that's where I was supposed to be heading. So,
Awesome. Yeah. That's actually really cool that even from then on that you had people that supported you that say, you should really go into this field and giving you all the kinds of feedback. And yes, of course, going back to what you said, that when it comes to our work, of course, when people critique it, they're not doing it out like us, but they're doing it to like make us become better writers, better historians.
Right.
And that is important because, we do have like a symbiotic relationship with our work because we tend to have it be a reflection of us, but we shouldn't. Our work is not our self-worth. We should always distance ourselves from it, but still defend it in stages, which is all important. And then we now arrive at the final question, Lynne, which you may have already answered in a previous question, but I am curious to hear your thoughts on it if it's changed. So, with everything that you said in this interview and everything you said in our first ever interview, pretty much everything that you've experienced and gone through in your journey as an historian, what is your word of wisdom to future historians who want to get their foot in the door?
I think seeking out others to help you. What I mean by that is, when I first was starting, and even though I ran into Michael. It was just, I wasn't even seeking him out. I mean, I joined Lincoln for a professional networking thing. I did do that for that reason. So I wasn't seeking out, but I didn't realize when I got Michael that he was, first time we met, he was right from the start. He was encouraging me and all that. So I think having somebody or some group of people like we have
Mm-hmm.
that the profession themselves, and understanding that you cannot expect to go from beginning historian to like the professional know-it-all historians, people names that people know
Right.
from start. It is a process. It is a growing process. It's stepping stones. Like for me right now, as you know, my I've never been paid for my work. So right now, this journal is I just submitted to. I'm hoping it's a paid one, but I hope I get paid for it. So that would be like a stepping stone for me to another level. Yes, I've had scholarly articles printed and all that. And that's great, and it's a stepping stone. And you have to remember, as a historian, that each thing you do is a stepping stone. It's just a stepping
Mm-hmm.
stone to the next thing, and then you're starting over from there to there and to there. And to remember to use the online resources that are out there for research, the archives that are online. Use those, and use those people that work there too, because you can find things that you might not know. Since I was in grad school during COVID, I didn't have a choice. That's how I got stuff. Um, but I had this one person at this one library, a skeleton combined digital research arms library. The librarian, he helped me find the actual primary source of major analysis of his operational theory doctrine. My advanced basis in my advanced base operations in Micronesia. He helped me find the original document. And so I actually have that in my own because of me reaching out to others. So don't be afraid to reach out to others and ask for help. This is the big thing.
Absolutely. 100%, Lynn. Absolutely. To the end of the day, never be afraid to ask for help, because just as Lynn said, like, Michael was another person, well, actually the first person I reached out to on LinkedIn. And that was a snowball effect of how I met everyone that I've name dropped here on LinkedIn, including Lynn. When me and Lynn first met the first time 2 years ago, it was incredible meeting her and a bunch of other historians. And then since then, it's been great. I mean, we're all great friends. We all have supported each other, and it's just incredible. And I've learned so much from them, and they've learned so much from me, because that's the thing about having connections. We grow with each other, and there is nothing more powerful, in my opinion, than having people in your corner who will help you and support you, and will call you out if the needs be. If they need to give you the hard truth, if something's up, like for your writing, it's like, hey man, this is a good talk, but you definitely need to change it. And it's like, you're right, because they can see things that I wouldn't see. And ultimately, I'm very, very fortunate to have people like Lynn, Courtney, Michael, Chrissy, Joyce, Anthony Tucker, Chloe, Angelina, Michael. I may have already name dropped you twice. I'm going in circles. Everybody who I've had in my circle, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well, I want to say thank you too, and like you said, that LinkedIn connection. Like I met you, and I did your podcast, and I've done other podcasts. That network thing, all because of that one connection spreading out fast. And LinkedIn has been great for us historians
Yes.
connect with each other. And I mean, I'm in Michigan, he's in California. Michael and I are both in Michigan, so it's kind of nice that we can actually see each other in person. But yeah, it's awesome that we have this opportunity to talk with each other and to grow and to help push each other and encourage each other. If you can get into honor societies that are historical honor societies or leadership societies, even those can be helpful. Because I know for me, I did the National Leadership of Success Society, and because of that, I had Gabriel, Michael, Courtney, Mark Morgan. These are people that I could reach out to and ask to help me as a group, and they helped me take this journey that I've been on since December.
Mm-hmm.
And help me to. And they're like, I'm sure Gabriel would be like, don't beat yourself up because you didn't get done by end of April like you wanted to, or whatever. It was, I'm gonna do next time. I'll have my goal. I'm gonna keep going, that grit. But all that comes together, through us reaching out to each other and being willing to put yourself out there. For me, coming on your show the first time was very nerve-wracking. You already knew that.
I remember that. I do.
And I was just like, me? On a podcast? Talking? Wow. Like I'm excited, but nervous. That I don't want to get talking too fast because I'm too passionate or so it's just, but it's been great, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I really do for being my friend, including me in all your stuff. I really appreciate you very much.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you for those very sweet and very, very amazing words. And this is a perfect ending to this amazing historians interview. Thank you all, viewers and listeners, for joining us today for another episode. Again, I want to give a huge thank you to my friend Lynn for coming back on the show for her, which is now, if I'm not mistaken, her fourth time. Will be her fourth time here on the channel. I think you're now tied with, if I'm not mistaken, probably my friend Kim, and you're almost close to Michael as well. So you guys are in the top 3. So thank you for coming back. Thank you for coming back on the show, Lynn. It really means a lot. And before we end today, where can people find and engage with you on social media, and what upcoming projects can we expect from you in the near future?
Right now, I am currently actually writing a review that I will post on LinkedIn about a guy who was an underwater demolition team person. So I'm one of the first ones, actually. So I'm really excited about that. I will probably be writing some other things and putting on LinkedIn before I start moving back to my actual in-depth research stuff. So right now I'm just doing some more minor projects. And then my goal is to go to the Marine Corps Archive and hopefully dig into Oliver P. Smith and some others. And I might start working on, something else too. A Marine, Dan Daly. I'm going to be looking into him too. So I have a couple of different things. Not sure which way I'm going. For sure next, but yeah. Always have projects, right?
Yes, definitely.
So yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn. And
yes.
That's my main contact for now. I do need to work on business cards these days.
Same here. And I will link all of that down below in the description of this video. And I will also tag the Historians Lounge episode that me and Lynn did last year regarding the United States Marines. That was a very fun discussion. And I encourage you all to go and check out my Anchor podcast. I know I don't post there as much as I usually did in the past, but I encourage you, all my followers and listeners, to check out the very first episode with Lynn on my show. It was actually a really great episode, and it will be in season 2. So just be lookout for that, season 2 with Lynn. And with that, listeners, thank you all for coming on the show and watching another Historians episode. Again, thank you to my friend Lynn for coming back on the show and chatting with her and just catching up. It's nice chatting with a good friend.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Lynn. And until next time, viewers, make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below. As this has been the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill signing out. And until next time, have a wonderful day.